Chapter 1, Introduction. Ever since the dawn of time, humanity has faced disasters. Earthquakes, forest fires, hurricanes, and drought have hindered man's life and sometimes even taken away their lives. We can't just blame Mother Nature, as we humans are experts in creating our own disasters. Humankind has caused everything from financial crises to war, hindering our own best efforts, even to the point where it can seem we're back to the caveman's essential struggle for survival. To say that those disasters can't strike us is as foolish as living the life of an ostrich, sticking our collective heads in the sand to pretend the predator doesn't exist. Just because we don't see any reason today to believe that a disaster is right around the corner, doesn't mean one isn't there. Many disasters strike without warning, giving little to no time to prepare. In times past, people lived in such a way that they were more prepared to deal with disasters. They might not have had the technology we have available today, but they had something much more important: self-reliance. Modern man has become too dependent upon government institutions, expecting them to take care of citizens when a crisis strikes. Unfortunately, governments worldwide have uniformly shown their inability to do that. Our ancestors were more prepared than we are, only because they lived close to disaster. Their manner of life lent itself to being better prepared to face daily life challenges. They stockpiled food for the winter, dug their well for water, built their shelters from storms, and had the weapons to defend themselves from both two-legged and four-legged predators. Our ancestors had two distinct advantages: they were mentally prepared, as well as physically prepared. Of the two, mental preparation is the most difficult to achieve. Anyone can stockpile food, so they have something to eat if the store shelves are empty, or spend time working out to be strong enough to cross mountains if necessary to survive. But not everyone knows where to get water when the city's water supply stops working anymore. What does it take to survive? If you ask the average person on the street what tools they need to survive when disaster strikes, they're likely to answer with something they need, like their cell phones, instead of the things truly needed for survival. It's too easy not to take survival practices or any disaster situation seriously because it's not something we usually have to think about. Instead, our minds focus on what makes our lives enjoyable, not the items necessary to survive. On the most basic level, survival means keeping your body alive, not keeping your life comfortable. There aren't many things your body needs to achieve that goal, although everyone is critical for survival. In order of importance, your body needs oxygen, homeostasis, maintaining body temperature, water, food. The priority is rated by how long the human body can live without them. You can only live for a few minutes without oxygen, but for our purposes, we can assume that oxygen will be available, considering how much of it is in the air around us. Should that oxygen disappear, your best efforts would add mere hours to your life without finding a new source. The second biggest need is homeostasis, the maintenance of your body temperature. A change of only a couple of degrees higher or lower in body temperature will drastically reduce your ability to function, and a change of a few degrees beyond that will kill you. Hypothermia, the loss of body heat, is one of the biggest killers in the wild. Someone who falls overboard from a ship into freezing water only has minutes to live. If they are not removed from the water and warmed back to a safe temperature range, their chances to survive become slim. Several things can be done to maintain body temperature, most commonly clothing and shelter. Clothing and accessories, like gloves and hats, insulate the body so that heat isn't lost as quickly. The shelter provides an environment that protects us from the elements, especially cold. We heat our homes for comfort and to help our bodies maintain optimal temperatures. Without water, you can only survive about 3 days before dehydration becomes deadly. Figures vary for how much of the human body is made up of water. Depending on where you get your information, it can be from about 50% to over 70%. These differences come from the different methods used to calculate the percentage of water. Not all types of cells have the same amount of water, making it difficult to determine the actual water content of the body as a whole. Nevertheless, it is safe to say that it contains a lot of water. Without it, life cannot continue. Most survival experts say it takes a minimum of 4 liters, 1 gallon, of water per day to survive. These 4 liters are supposed to provide for drinking and cooking, not cleaning. However, the conditions you're stuck in can change those requirements. In moderate temperatures, these 4 liters might be enough, but in a hot climate, you have to calculate with 8 liters, 2 gallons, per person per day. On a hot day, you can sweat out more than 4 liters, especially if you are doing physical work or trekking outside. Food is also an important necessity, although it ranks at the bottom of the list. The average person can live for about 30 days without food. While your energy level might suffer without sustenance, you can still function. Anyone who makes it past 30 days will see a rapid decline in functioning, even if they still have fat reserves. A disaster survival kit needs to meet these needs to be effective and must include ways of starting a fire to maintain body temperature, also needed for cooking. Shelter, or means of constructing a shelter. Water, or ways of purifying water. First aid kit. Food, or ways to gather, foraging, or catch food. Chronic medication. How well the survival kit does these things depends upon the size of the kit, where it is intended to be used, and the survival skills of the kit's owner. A kit intended for carrying with you can't possibly contain enough food and water to survive for a week, although it can contain the necessary equipment for fishing and purifying water. Of course, fishing supplies may not be as useful as hunting supplies in places with scarce water. Having survival equipment without the knowledge to use it isn't very helpful. As mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter how many matches a person has, if they can't build a fire, those matches aren't doing them much good. On the other hand, someone with strong survival skills can get by with less, as they know how to improvise with what's available. Since each of these needs is so important, redundancy is also important. If you only have one means of purifying water and lose that means, you might die of dysentery. Therefore, it makes sense to have an alternate means of purifying water. The same applies to all of these basic needs. Situations vary. While the best possible survival situation is to be caught at home when a disaster strikes, things don't always work out that way. Therefore, it is a good idea to have a home disaster survival kit and an away-from-home disaster survival kit. In both instances, prepare for the worst possible disaster that you can imagine hitting you. That way, your preparations will suffice for all lesser disasters as well. This book takes an in-depth look at the need for home and portable disaster survival kits. Please keep in mind that some of this is subjective. What one person needs may not be the same as what another one needs, therefore, each person must customize a survival kit to meet their needs. Items can change depending upon local climate, the type of disasters likely in that region, age, gender, level of survival training, physical condition and strength. Ultimately, your final kit may look quite different than mine. That's okay, just as long as it works for you. You're the one who is going to have to use it to stay alive in a worst-case scenario, so take your personal needs into account. It would help if you decided for yourself what you need to survive.